Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the launch of the World Energy Outlook 2012 in Singapore. This event is co-hosted by the International Energy Agency and the Energy Market Authority. Without much further ado, please welcome Mr. Chee Hong Tat, Chief Executive of the Energy Market Authority, to deliver the welcome remarks. Mr. Chee, please.
Dr. Bureau, Chief Economist, International Energy Agency, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Energy Market Authority, I would like to welcome all of you to the launch of the World Energy Outlook 2012 in Singapore. This is the 5th year that we are co-hosting the WEO, World Energy Outlook, WEO lecture series with the International Energy Agency, and we're delighted that Dr. Fateh Bureau is able to join us again this year. As Southeast Asia continues its rapid economic growth, so too has its demand for energy. And together with the demand from China and India, this will constitute more than half the global energy demand growth by 2035. With the need to balance economic growth, energy security, and environmental protection, countries in Southeast Asia need to work closely with key international bodies such as the IEA to build a sustainable energy future. ASEAN has taken steps in this direction to deepen our engagements with the IEA. Last year, ASEAN and the IEA signed a memorandum of understanding to enhance energy cooperation. One of the first projects was the ASEAN chapter in the IEA's Energy Technology Perspective 2012, which was released in June this year. The IEA's Executive Director, Ms. Maria van der Hoeven, delivered the opening keynote address at the recent Singapore International Energy Week, where she shared her thoughts about the role of Asia in the global energy landscape. Today's launch of WEO 2012 is another milestone in our excellent relations with the IEA. And I'm very pleased that my good friend, Dr. Fateh Bureau, has decided to make Singapore the first stop of his visit to Southeast Asia. Dr. Bureau is a well-known and highly respected economist, having spoken at many international conferences and receiving numerous awards for his significant contributions to the energy sector. He continues to lead the IEA's flagship WEO publication, which is recognized as the most authoritative source of strategic analysis of global energy markets. So this afternoon, we are very privileged to have the opportunity to hear from Dr. Fateh Bureau. So without further ado, I would now like to invite Dr. Bureau on stage to deliver his address. Dr. Bureau, please.
Mr. Chief, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, good afternoon. It's a great pleasure to be back to Singapore. When I come here, I always feel at home, so as I shared with a couple of you a few hours ago. And I feel at home because I feel that the messages I give, the discussions I have with the colleagues are very much worthwhile. I get a lot of feedback, I get a lot of questions, discussions, and this is very much appreciated. It is also very nice for me to observe every time I come to Singapore to see a change, a development in the energy scene. Work going on energy side and efficiency, environment, they are very much appreciated. So my congratulations to our colleagues in the administration. So today, I would like to share with you some of the findings of our World Energy Outlook. We released the book 2 weeks ago in London, and since then we are visiting a few capitals for the first time in Asia, and I am very happy to start the Asia tour in Singapore today. This outlook has a couple of important messages, but I'm going to share with you two important ones, as at least I think the important ones with you today. The first one is on the very fact that our numbers show that the foundations of global energy system are shifting rapidly. And even though your country, your business may not be one of the drivers of that change in the foundations, you, us, we will all be affected with the consequences of this shift. But first of all, let me tell you what are the key drivers of this shift. We are seeing substantial growth in some countries which are not the usual suspects, growth of oil and gas, such as United States, Canada, and Iraq. You may say, why Iraq, another country in the oil producers in the Middle East? But you have to be careful because Iraq has a rather different investment framework compared to some of its neighbors. International money can freely go and invest there and be a part of the game, whereas it is not possible in many neighboring countries. So, US, Canada, Iraq coming with a lot of production, oil and gas, and it will have implications. Second, after Fukushima, we see the change in the plans of many countries in terms of their nuclear power plans. It started with Germany, Switzerland, Italy, and then recently Japanese government had a very strong statement in terms of the future of nuclear power. And even in France, where I live, we see a very strong trend from the government side to decline the share of nuclear power in the energy mix. And this will have implications for all of us, because if the share of nuclear goes down, share of something gas has to go up. It can be natural gas, it can be coal, renewables, or whatsoever. It will have implications for the global markets. The third driver is something that goes unnoticed in many cases, because it doesn't make big headlines in the newspapers, which is the very fact that only within the last year, at least in 4 major economies, there are many countries, but 4 major economies, there are some legislative push in terms of energy efficiency. And they have legal power. What are those? In the United States, the first Obama administration has successfully introduced fuel efficiency standards for cars and trucks. So you will see more efficient US cars in the markets now, using less gasoline, less diesel compared to past. In Europe, very recently, we have now an energy efficiency directive, which sets a legal basis for energy efficiency improvements for all the countries in Europe. In Japan, there is also a very strong target in terms of electricity savings by 2030. And perhaps most importantly, from a global perspective, China in its last 5-year plan, set a strong target in terms of energy intensity improvements. So these three drivers, surge in the oil and gas production in new, in quote, countries, the changes in the dynamics of nuclear power, and the growing momentum on the energy efficiency side are shifting the balances in global energy mix. And this will impact everybody, as I said, in terms of the relative economic power of the countries in the world, and also have implications for the geopolitical landscape, as I will try to explain you in a few minutes. A bit on the prices. Today, when we look at the oil prices, they are to be very high. When we think about the high oil prices, the first number comes to our mind is 2008, $147, which is right for a day, but it doesn't matter much for the economy or the impact on the decision makers. What is important for the oil prices is that the duration, how long prices are high. So when you get this year, the year of 2012, 1st of January 2012, up to date, today, the average oil price this year of the last 11 months is the highest in the history in terms of oil prices. As such, it is definitely a major challenge for the global economic recovery. And when we look at the natural gas prices, we see a different picture. European natural gas prices today are 5 times higher than US levels. And in Asia, it is up to 8 times higher than US levels. This is definitely very striking and has major consequences, and I will come in a minute to the consequences of this. But it is even more impressive if you consider that only 5 years ago, not much, 5 years ago, natural gas prices in these 3 regions were more or less equal, perhaps $1 or $1.50 difference in these 3 regions. And now, in 5 years of time, more of a parity in the prices, we came to a huge divergence with major consequences. A few points on the unsustainability of the energy system before looking at the future. First of all, fossil fuel subsidies in many emerging countries increased substantially last year, over $500 billion US. And we have major subsidies in the Middle East and also in Asia. And fossil fuel subsidies are giving encouragement, incentive to increase CO2 emissions, and plays a definitely negative role in terms of energy efficiency. Because if something is very cheap under its normal value, we human beings tend to use it in a wasteful manner. And from a climate change point of view, I think fossil fuel subsidies are the #1 public enemy of the fight against climate change. When I said climate change, last year we have seen a record high carbon dioxide emissions and brought us closer to the point of no return, as I will tell you in a minute. And the renewable industries, meanwhile, are under growing pressure, especially wind and solar. When you look at the global renewable energy investments in the last 10 years, every year we observed an increase, each year in the last 10 years. And for the first time this year, we are expecting a decline in the global renewable energy investments. And this will have definitely some implications for climate change and beyond. A third point for the, which is a topic that we follow very closely since 10 years in the outlook, and some of the colleagues who follow the outlook work there in Japan long time would know that, which is the following. Today, 1.3 billion people, about 20% of the global population, they have no electricity. They have no access to electricity. In Sub-Saharan Africa, in Pakistan, India and Bangladesh. And we think this is a major issue. And despite the economic growth worldwide, in these regions, despite the technological improvements worldwide, if there are no major policy breakthroughs in 2035, there will be still 1 billion people who will have no access to electricity. And we think this is something beyond energy. It is not only an energy problem, not only an economic problem, but it is maybe even a moral problem for all of us. Finally, to put the context, we in this World Energy Outlook, in a special chapter, look at the nexus between water and energy. Today, about 15% of the global water use is for energy purposes, for cooling electricity plants, for shale gas production, oil production, biofuels production. And when we look at the future, we see that this 15% is going to grow significantly, and as a result of that, water is becoming a critical factor in assessing the viability of many energy projects. Up to now, when we look at the energy projects, we look at how much does the fuel cost, how much does the construction cost. We have to consider more and more closely the implications of availability of water for those projects. Now let me a bit look at the future. The future tells us that the share of OECD countries, what are those countries? US, Canada, European countries, Japan, Australia, Korea and New Zealand. Their share, which was about 2/3 in the global energy use, is declining quickly, and very soon their share will be down to 1/3. And where does the growth come from? It comes from China, India and Middle East. Exactly in line what Mr. Chi just told us. Where does the growth come from? The message is clear. Center of gravity of the global energy use is shifting to east, slowly but surely. And this will have implications for many, many other following trends, from investment to trade, from trade to foreign policy issues. Now, I talked to you about these changes in the United States. Let me tell you briefly, what is that change? Years and years, ladies and gentlemen, US oil production declined. We saw a decline. It is the conventional oil production. But as a result of a technological advancements, so-called shale oil increases now, and we see a growth again in the US oil production. And as a result, we expect around 2017, 5 years from now, United States will be the largest oil producer of the world, overtaking Saudi Arabia. In terms of natural gas, the same picture. Natural gas production was declining year after year in the United States, and again, as a change in the shale gas production, we see that the US gas production is increasing, and around 2015, United States is set to become the clear leader, top natural gas producer, overtaking Russia. So within 10 years of time, United States will overtake Saudi Arabia and Russia in terms of the largest oil and gas producer respectively. And this is mainly as a result of the changes in the technology and the framework which was created in the United States. Mr. Chi mentioned this is the 5th time that I am coming here, and I hope they will invite me again next year. It will be the 6th time and 7th time. I will be very happy to come here again. And the good thing about the traditions are that you can hold responsible for what you said. I can remember that 4 years ago, again in Singapore, as in some other places, I said a silent revolution in North America is starting. And that silent revolution, in terms of shale gas technologies, now became very loud and beyond the United States and Canada, with all its implications. One of the implications is on the Middle East. Until recently, United States was importing a substantial chunk of its oil from Middle East. But we expect, as a result of these developments, US imports from Middle East will soon come to a minimum, if not zero. And colleagues who follow the US politics, I'm not talking about energy politics, but general politics, would know very well that the US reliance on key producers in that region is a major issue in the United States. Another implication of this, until recently, Middle East was exporting half of its oil to West, half to East. But our projections show that very soon, about 90% of Middle East exports will go to Asia. This is a very important trend. Every day, the trade between Persian Gulf and Asia will grow. And this energy trade will be definitely multiplied by different factors. Investments in both ways, foreign policy, economic policy, and others will follow it. And this trend will definitely define many other trends, and we will see in the next years to come. Iraq, a few words on Iraq. You will hear about Iraq in the future. Again, if Mr. Chi invites me, I promise you in 4 years of time I will talk to you about Iraq, and I will show this graph to you again. What we see in this graph is the following. Today, Iraq produces about 3 million barrels per day of oil, and until recently it was only 2 million barrels per day. and we think it will come to 6 million barrels per day around 2020 and grow afterwards. In Iraq, there are huge resources. This is first. Huge resources, oil and gas, and plus, to produce 1 barrel of oil in Iraq is very cheap. For example, 15 times cheaper than the Canadian oil sands, or 10 times cheaper than the Russian oil, because geology is very, very easy. And there are, of course, many challenges. There are political challenges, other challenges, but oil is there, the resources are there, and there's a very determined government to turn this oil to revenues to reconstruct the economy. Where will the Iraq oil go? Again to Asia. And main destination will be China. About 2 million barrels per day will go to China, but it's not the only point. The other point is a lot of Chinese money is coming to Iraq as well. I mentioned to you this production growth in Iraq. About 30% of that growth in Iraq will come from the oil fields, which are either directly owned by the Chinese companies or Chinese companies together with other companies together. And there are other investments coming from China for the infrastructure, construction infrastructure in Iraq, and as such, there's an important trade link. I call it as B2B, Baghdad to Beijing trade link. There's a global link there, and this link is becoming very strong. That you will also hear about it very soon. A few words on natural gas markets. So, the very fact that our prediction in the World Energy Outlook 4 years ago became true has many implications. One of them is the trade today in the natural gas markets is very limited, and as a result of many new producers coming in the picture and many new so-called shale gas coming in the picture, we see that the international gas trade is becoming much more interwoven. The share of LNG, which is about 30% today in the international gas trade, will go up to 50%. Very strong increase. And this has many implications for some, in fact for everybody. For some, this is a very good news. For others, rather bad news. And for the third group, depends on. So I will explain you. For whom it's very good news. It's a very good news for US, very good news for Canada, very good news for Australia. Australia will be soon catching Qatar as the largest LNG exporter of the world. Very strong projects, especially on the coalbed method, unconventional gas going there. So definitely very good news for those countries and for their economies. Bad news for whom? Bad news for the traditional gas exporters. Because those gas exporters, before the shale gas revolution, were hoping the huge growth in their export levels, and now some of their potential clients to export the gas are becoming either self-sufficient and even exporting gas and became a competitor to them. So they are losing from the volume of gas they are producing. Second, some countries in Europe and even here and there in Asia starting to put pressure on the oil index gas prices. They say there are many producers now, so if you do not agree with the new terms that I suggest you, I will try to look at the other options. So it depends on group. The third group has now other options. And this is very important. And it is creating a pressure on the oil indexed pricing mechanisms in terms of gas. And many countries in Europe, I can tell you, at least 4 countries in Europe, have successfully negotiated with the traditional gas exporters to bring down the prices. So a new era is starting in terms of gas pricing. In Europe we have seen that, and I hope that we will see similar trends in the rest of the world, including Asia. Now, energy security is a key topic for many governments, if not all. And the more countries rely on imported oil and gas, the less secure they feel, because the vulnerability of their economies vis-à-vis international oil and gas price fluctuations are growing. Their foreign policy, in some cases, are becoming hostile their energy imports, and as a result of that, energy security is something that everybody is looking very carefully. For example, China imports today about 15% of it is gas, and about 15% of it is oil. And in China, energy security is a crucial issue. I am sure many of you have noticed that during the Chinese Communist Party conference a few weeks ago, energy security was one of the key topics that the Chinese leaders have discussed, and rightly so. Rightly so, because when you look at the future, we see that the import dependency of all the countries are going to grow. China is growing, both oil and gas. India is growing. Europe is growing. Japan cannot grow, it's already 100%, so this is already the atmosphere. But Japan is staying there where it is. So, becoming more of a problem for almost every major economy in the world, except United States. US goes completely, the other, ASEAN also growing, that's true, and United States is going in the other direction. Unlike ASEAN, unlike China, unlike India, unlike Europe and others. Europe takes this issue very seriously, China takes it very seriously, India and the others. And in terms of United States, they are becoming a gas exporter, we believe, before 2020. And oil imports are declining substantially. But oil imports are declining for 2 reasons. Some of you may have seen when our book came out, when we released to the press in London, the next day, in all the newspapers, or many newspapers, in the front page, the US is overtaking Saudi Arabia, US is becoming self-sufficient, and so on. But they made a mistake. If you have colleagues from media here, and we do have, I know, just for the information. The mistake they made is the following, and I am trying to bring this to their attention in the last couple of days. The declining